So anyway, all right, I think it's 8 o'clock. I said we'll do the recap at 8. So I wanted, because I kind of owe y'all. So, this weekend, the video that dropped today was on the Crush here. And we ran the Crush Friday night at Lexington 104 Speedway. And the class really just didn't make it. It was just very few cars. And we had some factory stocks that actually just paid additional pit entry fees and stuff, and then just put their cars into the class because it was guaranteed purse, but the class just had not made, just to kind of fill the field out. So I switched up, and so like Friday night, I ran the Orange Crush, and that track that we were at, Rachel's not as comfortable at that track yet, and so she just kind of, things were clicking for her at Poplar Bluff. And she's like, I want to turn around and like go back to Poplar Bluff. I've got it in my head, the driving and everything, and see if I can't take. And there was things that she's wanting to do. She felt like she could move forward. She just needs to, do that, like, press, further. So I'm like, okay, but we're gonna run a car to support Lexington 104. And this class didn't make, and I realized what was going on with my oil leaks and stuff. And so I was like, okay, we're going to run the factory stock. I'm going to pull my seat and put it in it. And so we scrambled, and we pulled the seat out of the Crush and got it in there, had to change up several things, and had to just like majorly change the setup to work with 130 pounds more weight on the left side of the car. So I had to just go all over the factory stock and make changes. But enough with that. At the end, before it's over, we'll talk about Leaf some. And I may just maybe next Sunday we can do a Sunday recap or something. We can talk specifically about the Leaf cars and what I was seeing on the car when I ran it the last time, because that video will be out. On this Kart Racing USA street stock right here, we're on it now on the setup. And I haven't been going back and doing setup videos. So when I first built the car and I was really chasing it last year and running some big races, I was just very transparent about where I was at in the understanding, and I was trying to figure out the chains and the tie downs. Some of those videos, I realized some of that information is not accurate, okay? And it's like, well, do I delete those videos or what do I do? And I think I just leave everything because I'm the stuff I don't know, I'm saying that I'm learning, I'm saying that I don't know, but here's what I feel, here's what I think. But where I'm at now, I feel like that I do understand what's going on. I've been working with Mr. J. Neal with BSB. I'm on his Go Fast team and stuff, and so like all of my shocks and stuff, I've been getting my springs and stuff from him, and he's been kind of walking me through how that the coil spring technology works when you want to go to like a soft left rear spring. It is very different. It is very different for sure, but there are some key things that you have to do that I want to talk about tonight. And this is what was just absolutely tearing me up, that I did not understand it and was not doing it right. And BSB has got a YouTube channel. J Neal's got a YouTube channel, and I will link that on my website and put it on the description here later for y'all as well. He has got videos where he explains every bit of this. People, there are lots of gems out there of information. Like, we're not sharing anything here that the man has not already explained himself, okay? But when we set up on this car right here, we are on a 850 spring on the right front. We are on a 750 spring on the left front. So we have a stiffer spring on the right front of this car, okay? And then on the rear, I've went to a 16-inch on the left rear and a 13-inch on the right rear. Now on that right rear, I went to a 250-pound spring, and it's one that Mr. J sells that the first couple of inches, it'll be down more like 230 pounds an inch. And then by the time you get from that second inch into that third on down, then it ramps up and it's a 250-pound spring on down, okay? 13-inch. I did not understand the importance. I could not mathematically get my head wrapped around the idea of having a shorter spring on the right side of the car, on the back, okay? And, it's like when I was looking at it from an engineering standpoint, the rate doesn't change. But what it does do is it has to do with the car's ability to leverage on that spring. So it's like by shortening up and having that top of that spring lower, and that's what we're talking about. It's not even as much that the spring itself is a shorter spring as it is the top of the spring that the car sits on. You've got it down lower. And so it is that location, it's that location of the top of the spring in comparison to the roll center on the back of the car. And so if that top of that spring is down further in comparison to that roll center where it twists over, it's like it's got more leverage on that spring, okay? And so 13-inch spring on the right side, 16-inch spring on the left side, but you set the car up on a traditional, stiffer left rear spring. And then you switch it. And he explains this. I didn't even grasp all of the nuances of it going on. So I'm going to walk through it here. So I set up the car. I put a 175 16-inch spring on this left rear of this car. And we'll get the camera under here in a minute. We're going to look at some stuff, okay? So don't bail on me. But you set up the car. You know, I got my springs on the front. I got the 175 on the left rear. I'm going to set the ride heights on this car. All right, so I'm going to set the car up, set the ride heights on it and everything, you know, and I have to set my ride heights with me not in the car because I don't have enough sandbags to make, like I'm at like 280 pounds right now, and I don't have the ability to put 280 pounds in the seat. So I set without me in the seat, but I set my ride heights on the car and everything. I get it all done. Okay, and what I did was I took and I pushed the O-ring on the left rear shock up, you know, on the shock. So I reset the O-ring on the left rear shock. I climbed in the car and I sat down in the car and I waited because I've got 550 pound compression traction shock on the left rear. So when I climb in the car's not just going to settle down. It's going to take it a minute before the car actually settles down to its final ride height. Because I mean, it'll stand up. All right, so I sat there and I waited a couple of minutes until the car had settled all the way down, and then I turned around and I got out of the car. All right, without disturbing or anything, I just eased out of the car. Okay, went around behind it, and of course that O-ring was up off that shock, but that O-ring was showing me where my ride height was with me in the car. And what I did is I turned around, I took that chain, and I said, okay, I'm going to go up 3 inches from where this O-ring is. And that's what I did. I went up. So I took a jack. I put a jack on the back corner of the car, not on the rear end, on the back corner of the car, and I jacked it up. Matter of fact, let's get up underneath here and look. Come on. You know, the really nice thing about moving that fuel cell forward, sure does make it easy to work on the car. Fuel cell's back up here, and it's a whole lot. All right, so we got shadows. Let me see if I can move this light around. There we go. Is that gonna work, y'all? I think so. Turn that a little bit. Okay, now we're there. All right, so this O-ring right here, I reset this O-ring. All right, I reset this O-ring, and this shock is straight up and down right here in line with this spring. Okay, so this is really showing me ride height very well. If this shock was way leaned or something, that would be a problem how I did that. But like, and this is something, you know, Mr. J told me, he says, hey, get this shock right here, you know, straight up and down in line where it can work. You know, if you lean this shock, you're taking strength away from this shock. All right, so I reset it, climbed in the car, let the car settle, you know, until it was not going to go any lower. So I waited a couple of minutes. I just sat there, you know, sat there and scrolled on Facebook. All right. So when I get out of the car and I come back, the O-ring's sitting like that. Okay. So then I turned around and I just come, you know, back over here. I put my floor jack and I jacked up until I took my ruler and I had 3 inches. And I said, well, I think this car is climbing 3 inches. Okay. So, And that's where the three, like, where did the three come from? Well, it's like, okay, I think the car is rising at least 3 inches normally when I throttle up. Like, I think I'm getting 3 inches. And so that's where that's coming from. So, oh man, I got this light for y'all, but it is killing me. All right, so up 3 inches, then I turned around and this chain right here, I took and I've got a bolt, I've got a tube right here bolted on. There's a big heavy washer right there that it's going through that puts it, holds it in the center for, I hand built this. I drilled holes through that bolt every 1/2 inch is what I did. So I put the bolt through there and I adjusted and set my chain right here to where that 3 inches, that chain was tight right there. So now the car can only rise 3 inches from my ride height. That's what I'm doing right there. All right, so the bolt going through it right here, that's for an at-track adjustment. Did that track, fixed the car. Gonna talk about that. But then this is a hard clamp right here that I actually clamp up so I can make real minor adjustments right here. And this thing clamps up, and what I did is I clearanced and ground back so that when it clamps up, it doesn't actually contact, where I can get that really tight squeeze and it won't slip on me. And I've watched it and put a mark on the other side to make sure and it does not slip or anything. So this is how I'm doing my chain on the car, where I've got infinite adjustment, plus being able to do a quick at-track adjustment of a 1/2 inch here as well. All right, so got it hanging now, right? Then I turn around, I take the screw, I back the jack screw all the way out, all right? I take that 175 spring off and pitch it, all right? You're done with it. That spring is only for setup. I know, but it's only for setup. All right, I'm gonna turn around then. I put the 125, a 16 inch, they're both 16 inch springs. I put the 125 spring in, all right, in place of it. Put the cup back on top. I took the jack screw. I turned the jack screw down, all right, until my top and cup right here, the slack come out. So I was sitting there just turning my jack screw by hand, and I was sitting there wiggling the cup on top. I'm wiggling the cup, I'm wiggling the cup, I'm wiggling the cup until it tightens up. I didn't really squeeze the spring, but it tightened up, all right? Now turn around, and at that point, now we're at 0 preload. Spring's not loose, but I'm not compressing it. I'm at 0 preload. So when we're talking about preload, we're talking about the amount of spring that you're compressing on the chain. Okay, you're on the chain and you've got the spring already compressed. It can't ever get off of the amount of weight you preload into it. All right. So I took and I went down to 200 pounds of preload. How did I do that? Well, I did math. Okay, so what I did is I took, where's my ruler? I took my ruler right here. And I got up, and what I did was I drilled a hole through my deck up here where I can just take a socket and run the jack down. And so I can take a ruler and I can sit on top of my jack and see where it's at when it was at 0. And then I went down on the ruler 1 5/8 inches because it's a 125 spring, and I was wanting to put 200 pounds of preload in that spring. So I just turned the jack down until the ruler had dropped down by 1 5/8 inches. And I knew that 1.625 times 125, I think it's like 208. But anyway, like that was the number that I could easily read on the ruler. It was right in there. And that is how you preload. You don't use scales to do preload or anything like that. Preload is where you're actually doing math. This is where, like you start talking about the guys that are using the spring smashers, and you talk about buying springs that have been rated because every spring is slightly different. That's one of the reasons that's critical. So like with me buying the springs from Mr. J, he sent me rate sheets on the springs. Like that's something that comes with them. So like I knew exactly, like it's telling me what that spring is, and how it does. Like the spring has got a serial number tag on it. And then like he's got those listed like in a table, this serial number, and his guys rate the springs, and then they put the information on there so you can look up your spring and see exactly what it was and do the math. Okay, so it's a good deal. I mean, it's a great company. It's a good deal. All right, so now we're preloaded, right? Task here, y'all. Keep me on. But so now we're preloaded. That means that when this car smacks against the chain, it has 200 pounds in that spring. Here's the way to think about that. When the car is a half inch into it, it's at the 200 pounds plus a half inch of a 125-pound spring. It's like, that's what you're doing. You're not going to zero. You're creating this zone from, like if ride height is 0 and then 3 inches is where I hit the chain, what I'm doing is I'm controlling that 3 inches of travel there. I'm changing where that rate starts and stops within that zone. That's what we're doing here, okay? Really, that's what we're doing. We're making the car act a certain way, roll over to a certain point and stop, but we're changing the amount of rate in that zone happening. And so that's starting to click to me, and it's making sense. Now, here's something. I don't know if y'all picked up on this, but I did this, and that jack screw is not where it needs to be, like for this car to be at the same ride height again. It took me a minute to get my head wrapped around that. Because, it's like I backed up 3 inches, and I put this preload in, and that's got nothing to do with where that jack screw was at for that 175. And so, you're like, well, why are you doing the 175? Blah, 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 blah. Well, here's why. Because when you set up your ride heights on this car, you had to set your table the whole way around the car. And you had to set your left front, you had to set your right front, you had to set your right rear. You're getting your whole table set up, and you're trying to get an equilibrium on the car to create that balance. When you go to this soft spring right here with a big, impossible to push by hand, you have to use a jack to put one of these on, by the way. Shock right here. I don't know how much gas is in this thing. That's a lot of gas. But anyway, when you go to this soft spring and then you go to this traction shock, it will take the place of that 175 on the track. Like in the shop, the car is going to fall down. All right? But on the track, you're doing a combination of a soft spring and a traction shock working together. And that shock is going to stand your car up, and you're going to stay in that zone. And now you're on that soft spring, but you're up on ride height, and your car can climb up, really easy. Whereas on the 175, when you climb up, when you're on a 175 spring or a 200 spring or something like that, when you climb 1 inch, and we'll just make the math easy here, okay? We'll talk about a 125 spring and a 250. If I'm on a 250-pound spring at ride height, and the car rises on the left rear 1 inch, that means 250 pounds of load has come out of my left rear when it came up 1 inch, okay? If I turned around and I changed to a 125 spring, that same 250 pounds of load coming out, the car has to rise 2 inches for that load to come out. So now I have got a lot more consistent traction on the left rear. This car is rising up, and this traction is diminishing at a slower rate. Make sense? You following me here? So that's what's going on between, that's where the soft spring advantage is that I can roll over. I can bring the left rear, can tuck under the car dynamically. I can get drive off of that lower control arm dropping, okay? So now the car is in a stance for me to really pick up the throttle, okay? But at the same time, I lost my place. I lost my track of thought right there. I'm telling you, that's the problem with going live, y'all. So it can traction up. It can traction up on that 125 like that, and it can drive. But in other words, you don't have to have this huge amount of load in your left rear to start with in order to be able to come up on the left side and still have some bite. And so in order to do that, so if you're on a traditional spring on the left rear, if you're on a 175 or a 200 or a 225 spring on the left rear, then what happens is that you end up with having to have a lot of left rear bite in the car. And a lot of y'all do. You've got a tremendous amount of left rear bite in the car so that the car is able to continue to get bite when it rolls up. Okay? That finally got there. It took me a minute. I had to gather my thoughts up. All right, so you're having to do all that. Well, see, so when I set up on the 175 to start with, and I set my ride heights and everything, I just had my bite for the stance I was on at 125 pounds. That's all the bite I had in the car, 125 pounds of bite. And set it all up. Now, why is it so important to hit the chain? Here's why, and this is the part that I missed, that I did not understand. You've got that traction. But it doesn't matter how much you roll over. That spring is, that soft spring is still going to have traction in the car. And so if you don't have a stopping point for the car to hit a chain or something to stop it, then when you throttle up, at a certain point, the left rear is going to start overpowering the car and it's going to start pushing you out of the turn. And that was happening to me at Camden in the heat race. I was talking to Mr. J, and I was saying, I don't think that I'm on the chain. And he's, and I'm asking him, I'm like, can you feel it? Can you feel the chain? He's like, yes, you should feel the chain. You should know when you hit the chain, as you go, like, so I go into the turn, and the car's coming up, and I'm getting into the throttle. You should feel the chain. You should feel the car bump the chain. Why do you want to feel the car bump the chain? Because what you're doing is you're getting up on that attitude, you're tucking that car, you're getting all of that traction, but you need the car to stop adding more to the left rear and start pushing it back toward the right rear so that you can bring you around the turn. If you don't hit the chain, then it tractions up and you keep pressing on the throttle and you've got all this left rear and you're not shifting any of it towards your right rear. So if you've got your number low enough, it might work, but it's not balanced. It's not gonna work to its best overall. And I really struggle to get my head around it. I'm just now seeing it. Okay, so I don't even think I'm perfect yet or anything like that. I'm just like in the zone of what works. When I was at the track running this car Friday night, I was at 3 inches and I went out in the heat race. Well, it wasn't a heat race. I went out in the hot laps and I was running the car and the track was tacky. And I still could tell that when I was throttling up, the car was driving out on me and I could not feel the car kind of stop. It was just like it would smoothly come up and the car was just drifting out. It was pushing out on me when I would throttle up. And I turned around and I come back to the pits and I took this bolt right here and I went down a ½ inch and I dropped my climb to 2.5 inches. All right. And when I dropped that to 2.5 inches, now my preload number was still the same and everything. All right. So it was technically hitting the chain at a higher number. If you think about it, I didn't change the jack or anything like that, but I went to 2.5 inches. And what happened was that when I was on the track, and like one end was vastly different from the other. One end was just hooked up and there was a brown line up top. But when I would go into it and I would throttle up, it's like the car would throttle up and I could feel the car shift and it would start driving off the right rear. So what it did was it was traction up on the left rear and then it would stop adding more traction and it would drive off with the right rear. It's like I would come in and I would feel the car do this and then just do that and that left front would just sit back down and it's like it would just tuck under and start pushing forward. Really neat. Had not, I see guys doing it and I'm just like, how in the crap are they doing that? But that's what's going on. That's what's going on. And I'm not all the way there yet. Because, I probably need to put a left front chain on the car and I need to control the amount and that will help me timing wise even more. And I'm not to that yet, so I don't want to talk about it tonight because I want to do it right, and understand it before I say anything about it. But I've been given some good advice. I just have to test it out. But that's how this chain works right here. So you don't scale with a 125 spring. You don't scale with a 125 spring. You scale with a 175. And you don't look at the bike number on this 125 and make adjustments. It doesn't make sense. It will be all over the place. It will be different based on where your chain's at and stuff. Scale it on 175, and then you do your math and stuff on the 125. I mean, I have a 100 spring. I didn't do a 100 spring. A lot of smart people say that a 100 is too soft for a 3,000 pound stock car. Mr. Bob Harris, if he said that one time in his videos, he's probably said it 100. And he's not the only one. Mr. J says the same thing, that below a 125, your car's going to start getting inconsistent because it's too soft for some tracks and stuff like that. I probably agree. Some people say a 150. If the track's rough, a 150 will work very well. I've got a 150. I don't know. I might try that at some point, but this 125 right here, I'm going to be sticking with this because we're trying to get ready for Street Stock Nationals this summer. So I am going to stick exactly on this and see if I can't dial everything in, get everything working. Do want to show you right quick. Let's slide across here. I'll show this right quick. But anyway, chain on the right rear. You see that chain right there? And this chain right here, its only purpose on this car, I have changed my thinking on this because I didn't understand, and I do now. The only thing this chain right here is doing on this street stock is it's keeping my spring from unloading. I literally just jacked the car up, like after I set my ride heights and I did everything, I jacked the car up until the spring itself, that's a 13-inch spring, and so I jacked the frame up until that spring got to about 12 3/4 inches, so it only had like a 1/4 inch of load on the spring, and I set the chain. Because all I was trying to do on that right rear was just have a chain that kept it from getting off the right rear. I didn't want it to ever be able to climb up off of that spring, because then that's going to be that free jerky effect that I'm trying to avoid. The chain itself, if you tighten that chain down, it will put traction in the car, but if you bang against that chain, the car will hook hard right on you, like uncontrollably hard right. So that's out. I had that happen to me. I didn't even realize what it was, and then I was researching and watching guys' videos that are a lot smarter than me and stuff, and they were talking about how that right rear chain, you get the chain tightened down too much and make the car turn right on you if you hit a bump or something. And it all started coming back together, and I understood what was going on at that point. The car's coming up, and when it bangs against that, like if you go through a rut or you've got like a hole in the track or something, and you bang against it real hard, what it does is it'll take that traction and go instant with it for a second, and then it'll go like instant and zero. It's like, so that tire will just unhook from the track. And when that tire unhooks from the track, if your left rear is hooked up, you know which direction you're going. So that's what's going on with having the chain too tight on the right rear. So it's just keeping it loaded, keeps it from being able to completely unload and become free on there is all it's doing. All right, let me climb out from underneath here. All right, so I'm going to catch up right quick. Let's see. Do you plan on running any more in Arkansas? Got there. Billy Britt said, let her run the street there. Just an idea. Yeah, and I'll tell you. So now I love my Leafer. Don't get me wrong. But I want to build a metric car. And I've been kind of hunting. I'm half hunting, it's like if I ran into a good metric frame around here somewhere, I'm wanting to pick up a metric frame and then put the jig back down. And I probably am going to, build me a metric frame car for like 2025 or 2026 or at some point and go through. I think I could go through building a car now, and I would like really be spot on take everything I've learned through the evolution. It's like we're going to build a car specifically, like using this best technology. And I don't know if it would be a Crate Racing USA. I might would research and like, do I build an INCA, a street stock, or, it's UMP or, something like that. But if I did that, I think, at that point then, okay, do we turn around and take this car right here and say, well, how do we rework that maybe for Rachel to drive, the Crush or something? So not saying that's out of the works, but not this year, because that had to change up the driver's compartment and everything on it. Let's see, Michael Keller. That's what I have as a factory stock and just started this year, and your video helped me. But hopefully we can race together one day. I hope so. If you're ever at a track with me, y'all, holler at me, okay? I promise you, I ain't never met a stranger, not a single one. Sean Cole, where are you headed to this weekend? Oh, let's see. I'm going to switch. So my plan's coming up weekend. I'm going to pull my seat back out of the factory stock, and I think Poplar Bluff may be running this Friday if I can work it out. May be able to get her back on that track, or either let her go up to Camden and run. It's a couple more tracks and everything, but like I said, I don't want to go in too many different places at first, just learning. But yeah, so I'm going to try to run Rachel somewhere next weekend. I'm trying to keep her in the seat as much as I can, where that we can keep some momentum going there. I like transparent. My truck has Johnny Burnett. It likes everybody just be honest. That's how I am. I know I don't know all of the answers and everything, y'all. Like, there's no doubt. It's like I'm learning. It's an evolution thing. So I just have to be completely honest, because I'm not always going to be right. I don't need anybody showing up mad. I know I'm going to make some mistakes. Chad Neeson says, thanks for the great info. Hit the like button. Hey! All right, if you're on here up to this point, and this, this information about how to make the left rear, if that's useful, or insightful to you in any way, smash the thumbs up button here, y'all, and help me out. All right, so thank you, Chad, for pointing that out. And Shane and John, like Shane, how you pronounce that? I don't know, typing it ain't gonna help me to pronounce it, but anyway, Shane and John Life, how many nights do you run your tires? Oh, running my tires on the H500s. So I use them, and I really use them. Last year, I believe I bought 10 new H500s last year. And I think I ran 10 or 12 races on the car last year. And so, like, there's some math there as far as that goes. But, I was running all of my tires probably at least 4 or 5 nights, if I had to guess. And, like, last night, I took fresh tires with me to the track. And then, let me turn this. That light is blinding me. But yeah, I took fresh tires to the track with me, 4 fresh tires. 2 were brand new, and 2, they punched like 53, and like there were some I got right at the end of last year. I didn't even put them on the car, because the ones that were on the car were punching like 54, 55, and they felt good. And me, I'm not tracking the tire as much as I'm tracking the durometer on them. So like, I durometer these H500s is what I do. And, I got the long acre durometer, and so, like, I'm buffing them off, I'm scuffing them, and then working on them and cleaning them. I clean all my tires with Simple Green. I try to do that early in the week, get the dirt off of them, because it just sits there and wicks the oils out of the rubber. So I clean them with Simple Green and pressure washer. I don't wrap them up, but I try to keep them inside the shop. And, like 54 and 55, they're, that's kind of in the middle. Like, they can be from like 2 races old to like 4 or 5 races old. And they seem like they still punch 54, 55. And then there's this point where that they'll go to 56 or 57. Like I'll have some, and they hit a point like after 5 or 6 races, it seems like, where that they jump up on the durometer 56, 57. I very rarely see a H500 go 58, 59, or 60 or something like that. Um, but when they do that, that tire won't fire off anymore. It's like they'll fire off if they're in that 54, 55, but once they get above that, it's like that's where they quit firing off. And I mean, like, I can like wear a lot of rubber off on them and just grind them away with a belt sander, and they won't go up on the durometer. I gave some kids, some of the bedwell, the younger generation. I raced with a lot of bedwells, really good racers we was running last night. But some of the next generation down of the bedwells, and I don't know exactly whose they were, kids and stuff. But anyway, but like I think Nathan or Wesley had like given them a factory stock, but they were like putting everything together. Like they're scratching. I mean, we're talking about young people here, and so like I gave them some tires. And those tires were well worn, but like when I durometered them, they durometered like 54, 55. And I'm like, those tires will work. I'm like, I know it don't look like there's a lot of rubber there, but like those tires will work. They'll be fine. And hopefully they will. And on the asphalt pull-offs, I really like the 30-35s. The 30-35s will fire off, and they'll warm up and stick to a dry slick track. And I'll run them until the cords show. I mean, until there's just nothing there. Because if I'm on dry slick, I don't need grooves anyway. So I'll run them. If a 30-35, I'll start the season out and I don't change. Like I'll buy a set of asphalt pull-offs and groove up. Like I bought like Barry Daniels, friend of mine, I got like 12 from him. And when I start running them and grooving them, it's just when they're wore out. Like that's when I quit running them. They work. They keep working. But they're a lot of trouble because you got to groove them, you got to sipe them, and they are hard to get on and off of rims because they got a thick bead going around for that wheel. Let's see. So where are we at? How close to? Sheen. Sheen and John, you said it right the first time. Which way? Sheen. I must have said Sheen. If I said Sheen, tell me if that was right. All right. Mr. James Dedman, how close to Cherokee are you running this season? Oh, I don't know. Maybe. I'm not going to be able to go to Gaffney for sure for any race, I don't think. But there's one in Georgia. I can't remember the name of it that I could make. Bring both cars to Poplar Bluff next weekend. I'll come over and help. Chuck Living Goods, one of my sponsors and everything. Chuck was going to come with me last night and help me at the races and everything, but I didn't know for sure. I was scrambling to get the car ready, and Chuck lives like 3 hours away, and it's like I was like, Chuck, I think I'm going to be ready. I'm not sure, and so he was like, okay, we'll do it another day. But yeah. I know. I think I'm gonna be able to do Poplar Bluff next weekend. Simple green or royal purple is a good cleaner. I've never tried the royal purple. I've always been a simple green guy. I just buy it by the gallon jug. Can you sipe the tires? Yes, the H500's Crate Racing USA is letting us sipe and groove. But I'm gonna say this, and I've learned this. I've stopped grooving H500s. And the consensus is in, siping is good. There's not enough rubber there to take even more away. And so here's what I'm doing. I'm grooving the outside. Hang on a second, y'all. Let me show you. So let me show you one of these new ones right here. All right, let's see if I can flip all around. There we go. Okay. So you see my pattern here this is the asphalt pull-off like I run on the Camaro right here. And so I don't put a whole lot. So this is a little bit more grooving right here. This is really just for dry slick right here. Okay. And then that right there is like for, a wet rack or, loose dirt and everything. You need a pattern like that. So look, so you see this from last year, where I'm putting the cuts in the side, and then I'm turning around, and you see the sipes. And of course, you see these sipes are opened up because this tire's been run several times. And then I'm cross grooving it down through here. I'm splitting the middle right here. Okay, all of this. Not doing this anymore. All right, I'm cutting this edge loose. See that groove right there? I'm cutting this edge loose right there. And then I have got no sipe here. And I've got one razor line, an 1/8 inch deep in each one of these right down the middle. So if you look, you see it? One line right through the middle. Now, why did I do one line right there? Well, because I'm wanting this thing to get side bite. I want to let this rubber twist a little bit. But I want to have all of this rubber. I don't want to, and I've tore some, and I've had some rubber chunk out on me, and then turn around and look. You see I went right across. So let me come around here. Yeah, you can see it good here. See how I took one razor. That's an 1/8 inch deep. That's a brand new tire. It's never been run. And so you see I just went right here. And so my thought process, nothing here on this edge right here, because I want that to stand up. I don't want that. I was chunking rubber out on these edges right here. So I quit doing that. And you see, I have not cut a side cut. I don't think it would hurt to put the side pattern right here that, you know, if you're on a really wet track, can help you kind of clean out the dirt. I don't think it hurts anything, but I don't think it helps. But this little groove right here to cut this block loose, to let this block, when that block is tied to that sidewall right there, that block right there don't twist like it should. And if you'll cut that groove around that edge right there, it lets that block work and twist like these blocks do. And so I just did this, like this one, I mounted up, and like this is the outside on the right side, because you see that 88 3/4 there. And so I cut this side loose, and then, like I said, I run the sipe up. I didn't even run through this. Well, when I flip this tire over, I'll turn around, and at that point, I'll cut that same groove over there when I flip this tire. Because what I do is I flip them back and forth, you know, and I'll run, 4 or 5 races, and I'll rotate them. Got to get you one of them coats. But yeah, so I do that right there. And then you see here, there's one from last year. You see I'd done the same thing. And see how I was double grooving? I was running a double groove down through there like that. I'm not doing that this year, because what I ran into was that it was actually, I would actually rip the rubber out between these rubber. It was just too much, and I would actually rip the rubber out from between them. So I quit running the grooves. And you see, I haven't cut across this one. I didn't do any of that. But now this was what I was setting up for a steer tire. So I would do this double groove right here. I did this one in the middle. But like I said, this year I'm just going to do a single sight, and no grooving anywhere but on the edge. All right. All right, hang on. Let me flip y'all back around. Remember, no secrets here at Dirt Race Life, right? No secrets. All right, so where are we at? Can you sight the tires? Dylan Murray, how was the show? Hey, we missed it. There wasn't enough cars, Dylan. There just wasn't enough cars. There are a lot of factory stocks in my local area, West Tennessee, Eastern Arkansas, West Tennessee, the Boot Heel of Missouri, Southwestern Kentucky. So like there's this area that the tracks I go to in there's a lot of stock cars, of some class, that have got like full frames and, some modifications, but like they have to have a clutch. They still got to have like stock factory, linkages on the back of them. All of the lower control arms on the front stuff's got to be stock. There's a lot of those type of cars in the area, but the modifieds around here, so there's a hole right here. There's not UMP, there's not USRA, there's not IMCA. It's a hole. There's some crate racing B mods, crate racing modified, which is like a limited modified, it's a 3-link modified. But it's just, the cars just aren't here in the modified. And so like they were running a modified show this weekend that was, and there was guys from Arkansas, with like IMCA modifieds and stuff that did come. There was a couple of guys that did come, but they needed 40 or 50 cars for the kind of show that paying out like $3,000. And they just couldn't do it. I mean, it was like the cars didn't show up. And so it's like, there is no show. We'll have to postpone that part of it. And I hate that. It's really hard for a track to be able to live through that and make that work. But I agree with it from a business standpoint. They're trying really hard at that track. That's why I keep going back and trying to help. And we showed up, both nights with a car and, and 3 people in the pits. Oh, let's see. Towel City's punch in the same range. I didn't know that, so I do now. I'm not sure what 1 gallon of xylene and a gallon. John and Sheen Life. I'm not sure what 1 gallon of xylene and a gallon of toluene mix with a quart of ATF transmission fluid is used for, but yeah, it's Sheen. I have experience with that. And years ago, we ran asphalt pull-offs, and we bought asphalt pull-offs for $10 a piece back in the late 90s. And I worked at a hardware store. And we had xylene, we had toluene, we had ATF transmission fluid, and we had naphtha. And it really does work. And I can tell you, your tires have to be $10 a piece because you will run them one race. But yeah, you can put chemicals on rubber that will absolutely disintegrate that rubber, but it will sure be sticky while it's disintegrating. So, not anything that I do now, but yeah, back in the day, the asphalt pull-offs, we would get them. They was hard as a rock. It would be like the F55s or something, or F50s, maybe the F40s and F50s. Them things would punch like 65. And I would take and we would groove them. We didn't sipe them. I didn't have a siper, but I had a grooving iron. And I would groove them tires up, and then I would turn around and we would take towels. I had a bunch of old towels. And so I would soak these towels, and then turn around and I would roll them around the tire. And then I had garbage bags that I had cut open because, they didn't have the cheap rolls of plastic, or at least me. I mean, I was in my 20s. I was hustling. And so then I would turn around and I would take this black garbage bag. I used them over and over and over. And I would wrap around it, and then I would sit it where it was tucked under, and then it was like, don't go in the shop after that because, woo, boy, you better leave a door open. Don't flip on a light switch. Dangerous stuff. Very dangerous stuff. Glad I don't fool it anymore. But will it soften a tire? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I would go, there was a track I'd run at that was up in Malden, Missouri, and it had sand in the surface of it. It was like clay, but it was really, really sandy. And I would run tires that had never had anything done to them, and you would just put very few grooves because it was just so abrasive on them. And I had some tires, and they had been treated like that. And I went up there, and of course, nobody punched back. Nobody cared. There was no rules. There was no rules on the tires back then like that. It was just like asphalt pull-offs. That was the rule. People ran brand new F15s that could afford them. That's what you're running against. But I never made it through the feature. I just ran. They went to the cords, like after like 10 laps, they went to the cords, and then they just blew. Like I cut the right rear down. And when we come off the track with the right rear, well, crap, the other 3, they were all cords and everything, but car was still working. Car was sticking just fine. Wasn't a bit of rubber on them tires. The car was sticking. So I know about some of that stuff. Thanks for chatting last night. Picked up some good. Oh, Mr. Tommy. Hey, yeah, met them at the track last night. He was there, and Dylan Murray, hard to run big show with so few open mod. Yeah, it's really tough on the modifieds. We need some more modifieds for sure. And let's see, Keith Evans used to use brake fluid and sit them in the sun for a day of the race and soften our tires. Yeah, brake fluid is extremely damaging to the rubber. It will ruin it. It will ruin it, but make it soft for a minute. So anyways, all right, I'm caught up on that. We've talked about. I want to show y'all about the setup on it. Ride height. Oh, in here. I don't want anybody blessing me out right quick because we're running out of time. But just real quickly, how can I do? Because y'all know I just show it all, and hopefully that doesn't show it backwards or anything like that. But so you'll see right here, crusher setup. My ride height's that's my front bolts. My left front, that's that inner bolt that goes through the control arm into the frame. I was 9 3/16 off the floor on the left front, and I was 9 inches on the right front. So I changed the car to get the car over on the right front. And then the bolt going through my lower control arm into the frame on the left rear was at 11 1/8 inch. And then on the right rear, it was at 10 3/4. So you see how much I pitched that car over? That was because the car was not wanting to climb up on the left rear. I was struggling to get the car to come up. And so I changed the ride heights to get that car to come up. And that was, like I said, no driver, center control arms. Right rear spring, no driver. And then, I didn't show this. I didn't talk about this. See, I said right rear spring, no driver, 2 1/8 inch compressed. Spring setups, of course, we've already talked about 750 on the left front, 850 on the right front, 175 setup on the left rear, and then a 230, 250 on the right rear. Changed to a 125 afterwards. I'm going to come back to that right rear, don't worry. And then when it scaled out, I scaled out at 750 on the left front, 667 on the right front, 877, and then 742 is where I ended up. And the left side percentage was at 53.6. The rear was at 53.3. The cross was at 50.9. The left rear bike, I said 125, 135 pounds. And then changed to the 125, and the bike dropped to 123 pounds at 3 inches with 1 3/4. I ended up at 1 3/4 inches of load. Okay, I said 1 5/16, 1 5/8. I was working with that. I wrote down it was at 1 3/4. So that was a little more than 208. I could do the math on that. That would be, let me 215, something like that. But anyway, all right. So on the right rear, I physically moved weight on the right rear until the right rear spring compressed to 2/3 of the total load on the scales. And so that right rear, and you can't get it's hard to get exactly there. Of course, I just lost my place. Anyway, so that right rear weighed 742 pounds. That's how much it was on the scale. And that spring, I had a little over 500 pounds on the spring. So I was trying to get that spring to have about 2/3 of that load on it. And you're like, Jason, what in the world are you talking about? But what I was doing there is I'm getting that right rear to be loaded. That right rear has got to have load in it. Not chained up load, not preload, but like actual physical weight sitting on the right rear. And it can't be just, like you jacking in it and everything. I physically move the weight around on the car so that, like when I did the math, I'm sitting at 7, like basically the way to look at this is like, okay, on the scales, it's about 750 pounds. I made sure that about 500 of that was in actual spring compression. And Mr. J is the one that has explained that that's really important. Like you want these cars to be able to drive off that right rear. That's about, you're hitting your chain on your left rear, you're getting your car to roll over and sit down on that right rear. You're trying to get that side bite in that turn when you roll into that turn, because remember, the setup right here, you're not kicking the car out. You're rolling in, you're decelerating, you're rolling in and trying to just pick the throttle up. You're rolling into the turn and picking the throttle up. Well, you've got to have load in that right rear so that when you pick that throttle up, that the car will actually drive and start steering around. And, so that's why I'm recording like how much that spring was compressed. I actually measured with a ruler how much that right rear spring was compressed and did the math to see that I was within that kind of that 2/3 range. Didn't have to be perfect, but like I was 742 pounds, on the scales, and I was 2 1/8 inch of compression on a 230, 250 spring. So I was right in there. Okay. So that was the setup on it. And let's see, where are we at? It's also healthy not to clean swimming pools in your uric acid. Now, I don't fool with uric acid. That's still very dangerous. What is your left rear droop load, or is that something you check? No, I don't think it's applicable, Dylan, on these type of cars. You know, like I'm not hanging the car like that and then seeing where it's at. Other than I guess in a way we kind of are like the droop, because you know when you're hanging it off the chain, then we're setting the preload load, you know, on the chain itself. But we're not measuring on the scale or anything to see what that is. And I'm not yet. I have not put my load stick on the rear. I've got lockouts. I'll show those real quick. So I made some lockout sticks for the rear of the car. I got a couple of different links where that I'll have it, and I've got the links I need and stuff. But anyway, I made these lockout sticks so that I can take and I can lock out like the right side and see what the left side is from that standpoint for the track, to be able to change out on my load stick. But I'm not to that yet. It's like one thing at a time. You know, you start trying to learn new technology in multiple areas, and that's when you'll end up with a mess and you don't know what you're doing. So I'm not to it yet, but I'm not. Don't give up on me. Let's see. Have we covered everything? I think so. We are an hour and 2 minutes. Didn't really talk about the Camaro, but I'm gonna get that video together. I'm gonna get it out. I know there are a lot of y'all on here right now that are Dirt Race Life members. I really, really appreciate y'all. I could not do it without you. And, you know, us being able to run 2 nights and, you know, like us being able to go Friday night and take the coil car and then turn around and Saturday night we ran the factory stock and we're able to make content for the channel, get all of this videoed and stuff. It worked out really well for us because I ain't gonna lie to you, we made money this weekend. That's a great thing because that's going to help us because, you know, we got some big shows that's coming and we're trying to build that momentum to be ready for them. But I could not be able to have the cars ready and be able to do that if I did not have my Dirt Race Life members. Thank y'all so much. And let's see. Last comments. BSB link on YouTube. I will go in the house. This is going to load. And I will put that link to their website on this video's description, and that's where you can go and find that. And because check him out, man, Mr. J, he's got very technical videos. You sit down when you've got some time, fix you a cup of coffee, and start walking through his videos. He's got videos where he goes around and he's like explaining every corner of the car. He's very deep into modified technology, but he's covering stock cars along the way and explaining differences, and it is very applicable. It's very similar between modifieds and stock cars on a lot of this technology. But now I think his jam is more the modifieds. When you listen to him talk, you can tell he's really, really into the modifieds. But anyway, that's it for us. Video out with the factory stock midweek. You're going to see, I ain't lying now, I had some fun in this car. And then turn around and we'll try next Sunday night to do a recap on that, and we'll talk about the setup changes because, you know, I went to that heavier right rear leaf on the Camaro. You can see what it does on the track. All right. Bye, y'all.